Good afternoon. This afternoon, we have the dark sky presentation. It's an education presentation to help prepare for the compliance of the dark sky requirements. The deadline is October 15, and this presentation is focusing on the commercial, hospitality, healthcare, and multifamily properties. I'm gonna give the microphone to James Peña, our electrical consultant, and here you go, Jim. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our presentation. This presentation is being recorded so that we can put it online and other people can get into it when they need to. My name is Jim Peña. I'm a professional electrical engineer working primarily in the field of illumination. And I've designed the homes and the businesses of the types that we're talking about, and have been involved with a number of projects in Malibu. And I'm happy to be part of your team and helping you achieve the goals of the Dark Sky Ordinance, on which I've also been involved. To begin with, this is for commercial, hospitality, healthcare, academic, multifamily, and properties other than single-family residences, duplexes, and row homes. Those fall into the residential category we talked about earlier. I will say that multifamily does have some interesting variations, and a lot of that has to do with architecture and how all that's carried out. I'm going to leave that up to the both the planning and the other departments of the city of Malibu to figure out some of those unusual cases. But this is going to cover commercial, hospitality, healthcare, academic buildings in particular, and has applicability to multifamily in many cases. Slide, please. The purpose of the Malibu Dark Sky Ordinance is to serve Malibu's rural character and quality of life, protect wildlife and habitats from light pollution, and preserve enjoyment of the nighttime sky, promote the city's goal of conserving energy and natural resources. Slide, please. What we're really here to talk about is light pollution and how not to do it. Light pollution is anthropogenic light at night, or we sometimes shorten that, call it ALAN. But anthropogenic means man-made. It isn't artificial light, it's real light, but it's made by mankind instead of through natural sources. It's the excessive use of man-made outdoor light. It wastes energy, disrupts the natural patterns of wildlife, contributes to the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, disrupts the circadian systems of all living beings, obscures the stars in the night sky. And this is real important. Light pollution affects the night sky up to 150 miles from the source. So whatever you do has got pretty big impact. And that's what we're trying to head off. Sky glow is the death of a dark sky, according to Michael Marlett. Slide, please. This is what we mean by a dark sky. On the left, it's an everyday, ordinary day in Los Angeles, and I think I know roughly where this is, but it's within the city limits. And then we had the great Los Angeles power blackout of 1994, and the photograph on the right was taken during that. Same place, same sky, no clouds, same trees, same buildings, but what a difference. And during that blackout, people were calling in to the city saying, there's smoke in the air. I don't know what it is. What's going on? And the city was saying, relax, what you're looking at is the Milky Way, which is what you're seeing in this slide on the right. Slide, please. What causes that sky glow? Well, you're looking at it. The city of Los Angeles is one of the more significant causes of sky glow in the world. It's a big city, and it has a lot of light pollution. This photograph taken from the Griffith Observatory shows how significant that is. And I want you to note that light pollution can travel 150 miles from its source. So when you're in Malibu and you look to the east, there will always be a sky glow as long as there's power on in LA. But as you look to the west and to the southwest, as we make improvements that we're working on with this ordinance, the skies will become clearer and darker, and you'll begin to see some more stars and perhaps maybe even a hint of the Milky Way. I hope someday Los Angeles catches up with us, but don't hold your breath. Slide, please. The ordinance will prevent us humans, from doing some things that turn out to be not so smart. Yes, New York is light polluted, but as a memorial to the Twin Towers of Light, somebody came up with the idea of shooting 2 twin towers of light straight up into the sky. And it's a pretty moving experience. I've seen it myself, and it's meaningful. Problem is that migratory birds get caught in these light streams going up into the sky. They get disoriented and they fly in circles until they fall to their death. 1.2 million migratory birds died before the city finally figured out the lights were doing it. And so now the lights are only turned on for memorial periods and for periods where there's no real significant migration. This just goes to show you the best laid plans of men can sometimes have unintended consequences. And this is a really bad one. Slide, please. You won't be able to do this with the ordinance. This is Sacramento River in Redding, California. Santiago Calatrava was the architect of this bridge. It's a masterpiece of his called the Sundial Bridge. And it spans the Sacramento River in a sort of a public park area of Redding. The problem is that they decided, well, here's a bridge, we got to light it. Doesn't every bridge have to be lighted? And they put in color changing lights. Within a very short period of time, within a year or two, it began to become a significant reduction in the salmon run of the Sacramento River. It was finally determined that disorientation and death resulting from predation and starvation was due to the lights. So the lights are no longer turned on when the salmon are running. They're very careful about it now. And so you can't always see this when you go there. This is a good outcome. Somebody, worked hard to get this done right. And all I can say is that it shows that if we work things out, we can enjoy the benefit of some of the exciting things about lighting, as long as we're careful. Slide, please. If there weren't the concerns we have about damage to the environment, the beaches in Malibu would look like this. All PCH would be one giant lighted up thing. Well, the ordinance will prevent this. Not only will it prevent developers and projects and everything else from becoming lighted like this, but it's going to help us go backwards and fix all the things that are there, minimizing the impact to the beach and to the shore from lighting in general. So it's going to go back to being pretty dark out there, which is good because those are going to give you the best views of the night sky as it corrects and gets better. Slide, please. Oh, by the way, the city is going to hold up their end of the bargain too, and changes will be made to all of the public lighting to coincide with what we're asking all private property owners to do. The ordinance will fix this. It'll mitigate or eliminate lighting that isn't compliant. Just about every light in this picture is going to have to be replaced. And businesses as well as homeowners are going to have to do this and put in lights that are warm toned, well shielded, and so we won't be seeing all of this glare. Slide, please. The ordinance is going to do this too. It's going to prevent light trespass, especially residential light trespass. This slide shows, in this case, a street light right outside somebody's bedroom window. And you can tell there's a ton of light going in there. It's not lighting anything useful. It's just lighting the side of the building. And so controlling that, putting the light where it belongs and avoiding this is a big contribution. And by not having your neighbors have lights that trespass onto your property and into your windows, as well as street lights, is going to be a big outcome that I think everybody's going to appreciate. Slide, please. Here's street lighting done poorly, unshielded, glaring. The only thing they did right here was to use warm toned lighting, but you can see it lights up the interiors of all these homes along this street. The city's not going to do this, and those developers and other projects who want to do this won't be able to do it either. So we are going to recover from any situations that are like this throughout the community as we go through and fix all the lighting to be compliant. Slide, please. These are just some basics of outdoor lighting. If you see that in this slide, in the picture, the useful light is the light that lights the area to be lit. Well, if you only want to light the street and the sidewalks, you really don't want light anywhere else, pretty much. And you can see the person standing there making a comment like something about his eyeballs, but he's seeing glare. Well, the glare is from light that's going somewhere it really isn't very useful. Likewise, the light is also going into the windows of the home nearby, and that's light trespass. We tend to call, if you're down pretty close to the street, glare, but we tend to call that light trespass. But glare is created throughout that entire zone where it isn't useful. Excuse me. Now, any light going direct upward is a waste of energy, it's a waste of light, and it causes sky glow. So we don't want any of that. But some light is going to bounce off of the roadway and go upward. There's not much we can do about that other than to not overlight anything, to keep the amount of light reasonable for the application. Some of that light, and this is a kind of unique to California on a regular basis, is the marine layer. When it comes in, the marine layer will reflect any light that goes up back down. And that can be really an awful lot of light. I've measured 10 times to 100 times more light than is going to be permitted here in the middle of San Diego Bay when the marine layer comes in, because they don't do a very good job of controlling the light around the bay. Our objective is that there will be very little bounce light because there's not a lot of waste light in the first place. Slide, please. The basics of dark sky lighting. There's 5 principles. These were co-developed by the International Dark Sky Association and the Illuminating Engineering Society. Number 1, all lighting should have a clear purpose. Aesthetics are sometimes a clear purpose, but not very often. Mostly a well-designed, effective, useful, properly designed lighting system will also be aesthetic. Sometimes a light is aesthetic, but as long as it follows these rules, it'll be okay. Number 2, light should be directed only where needed, as we just saw in the last slide. Number 3, light should be no brighter than necessary. As I talked about before, there are recommended light levels, and all the energy codes and Cal Green, the sustainability code for buildings, those are all based on these principles, especially no brighter than necessary. Title 24, the energy code, doesn't allow commercial non-residential properties any more energy than is necessary to be brighter. So by observing the code, chances are you're doing a pretty good job there. Light should only be on when it's useful. Again, those codes, as well as the ordinance, are requiring you to dim or turn off lights at night when they're not being used. And that really helps with maintaining the darkness for not only we humans, but for all the other creatures that live in and around Malibu. And finally, use warmer colored lights when possible. The warmer toned lights, which people tend to prefer anyway, those warmer toned lights create less sky glow and light pollution. The very cold bluish lights, like the blue headlights on some cars, those are not helping. Some people think they're brighter because of the glare. No, it's just glare. You can see just as well with the same amount of light that is warm toned, but without the glare. I highly recommend that. Slide, please. So lighting for all properties shall have a maximum Kelvin temperature of 3000 K. 3000 K is probably the most common, and below are the most common light color temperatures we use in homes, we use in hotels, we use in many types of retail, particularly higher end in clothing. So this is not uncommon to use 3000 K. It's just that now we're saying you have to use 3000 K outdoors for all properties from now on. Seasonal lighting can be over 3000 K, but only from November 15th to January 15th. Light trespass, you have to be very, very careful about not causing light trespass onto any other property, onto a residential property, onto an ESHA, that's an environmentally sensitive habitat area, an ESHA buffer, which exists next to ESHA areas, the ocean, the beaches, and public viewing areas. You're limited to 0.1 foot candle light trespass. Let me tell you, that is a very, very small amount of light. From any property onto any other property, such as from commercial property to commercial property, 0.25 foot candles, that's still not much light. So be very careful what happens around the perimeter of your property, so that you're not trespassing onto them and they're not trespassing onto you. Slide, please. So the ordinance requirements, all lighting must be fully shielded and directed downward. There's a curfew, lights extinguished by 11 p.m. or close of business, whichever is later. Except for lighting activated by motion sensors, they got to be turned off 10 minutes after activation. And lighting at building entrances and driveway egress points. That's an important understanding that, if you want to, let's say you've got a hotel or motel and you have a driveway entrance or building entrance, leave those lights on because they are part of providing the service that you need to. Specifically, it says for lighting ATMs and exterior access ways to hotel motel rooms are not subject to the curfew. This was carefully thought through so that lights for businesses that aren't open should be turned off. But as we know, hotel motel rooms, ATMs, and other things need 24/7 access. Outdoor lighting fixtures such as walkways, security lighting, and driveways, the luminaires are not to exceed 850 lumens apiece. This is to keep you from, frankly, using fixtures that are too powerful for these locations. I think it's a very good thing because it'll keep you from overlighting these areas. It'll make you use less powerful luminaires, and that'll confine the light trespass too. Other commercial lighting equipment is limited by both the Energy Code and by Cal Green standards. Cal Green is the state sustainability code. It's Title 24, Part 11. The Energy Code is Title 24, Part 6. Title 24 is a state building code. You have to follow it anyway, but these are the two really lighting intensive portions of the code. Slide, please. Lighting around the perimeter of the site, except as required for security lighting purposes, and where it is controlled by motion sensor, it extinguishes the light no later than 10 minutes after activation. And lighting for aesthetic purposes on any parcel of land that is located along, within, provides views to or is visible from any scenic area, scenic road, public viewing area, ESHA buffer is prohibited. This is one that is going to be a little bit of a challenge for some properties who have used lighting at night as an identity or to draw people. With very, very few properties are going to be allowed to do this, to have any of these functions. Now, the upcoming Malibu City ordinance changes, which are coming, we hope. I said they were proposed in August. I think they're still waiting to be approved. They may allow commercial facilities like service stations to employ specific calculations that involve lighting levels on the public right-of-way. What this means is where you have a driveway into a service station, it will be okay for you to have light trespass onto the roadway for safety. But that's being discussed right now, and I hope it passes. Slide, please. Now, shielding. This ordinance requires all light to be fully shielded. And fully shielded is sometimes not obvious to everybody, so let me explain it a little bit. Full shielding means you can't see the light source itself. Light is going downwards or maybe outwards at an angle less than horizontal, but you can't actually see the light source. Partial shielding means you may be able to see the light source a little bit, but it doesn't appear to be sending light upwards into high angles. Unshielded means light goes in all directions. If you can see brightness and glare from a light, it is probably partially shielded or unshielded. Slide, please. This is a real good example of what I mean. The upper photograph of this service garage area has partially shielded lights. And you can see the light source, and some of the light is bleeding up onto the side of the building above the lights. It's going up the tower to the right. That means lighting's going above the horizontal. So those are non-compliant. The lights below, same place, but relighted with fully shielded lights. You can see the light goes downward. Now there is some light on the tower and the upper building, but that's because it's bouncing off the ground. That's permissible, but you can't see the source, and the source isn't shining light directly into the air. That's what we have to be careful of, is getting it going downward. One other thing to notice, this light is spreading out across the side of the building, and it's lighting the pavement as well. It's providing plenty of light throughout the area. There's only 3 lights. It's lighting, the whole area, probably, 75 to 100 feet. It works because what happened is the light that hits the wall below it actually bounces out and helps light the driveway. So it isn't all just direct light. Indirect light, it's called, is a very useful part of lighting. And so if you worry about that light on the wall lighting your driveway or your walkway, it will. Just mount it onto a wall and the wall helps. Slide, please. Now there's that point I've made a couple times about the spectrum. The spectrum of light is a spectrum between light that is very cold colored and light that is very warm colored. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from it's a principle in physics. If I take a rock, or let's say a piece of steel, a hunk of steel, and I torch it, well, at first it'll just get hot, but if I make it real hot, it'll get red hot. If I keep going more and more, it'll start to get orange and then yellow and then white, and then it starts to turn blue. And anybody who knows about heat knows that the blue part of the flame is the hottest. Well, these are actually temperatures in degrees Kelvin, which is like Celsius, of that object at that temperature. This is the spectrum of white light that it gives off. So 1800 K, 1800 Kelvin, it's not very hot. So it's reddish. 2700 Kelvin, it's getting to be kind of whitish, and it's almost twice as hot. 3000, which is our limit, is a warm white light, but it's pretty white. Above that, the light starts turning blue. And so those colors, 3500, well, anything above 3000 are not permitted. Everything's got to be 3000 or less. I would recommend less as much as possible, because the lower the color temperature, the less light pollution we create, and that's good. It also has less impact on the environment and less impact upon the creatures that live throughout our environment. They're all affected by the light at night, and the lower the color temperature, the less impact on them too. Slide, please. Now, many properties in Malibu are going to have to replace their lighting. First thing I want to say is there is a dark sky luminaire for almost, every existing lighting situation and style of luminaire. We should be able to create adequate light at the location with something that meets the requirements of the ordinance. Dark sky luminaires can be found on the web. By the way, lighting fixture and luminaire mean the same thing to me. At lighting showrooms or through lighting sales agencies and websites. Now, because this is for non-residential properties, I make the assumption that most of you will work with professionals at some level. You're not going to do this yourself. You may try and do it with maintenance personnel, but it may be best to hire an electrical contractor. Major projects, you may even find it important to hire an architect, as well as, or maybe in addition to, a landscape architect to help you make the decisions to comply and maintain the aesthetics and function of the facility. Make sure your designers and contractors are observing the dark sky ordinance. There aren't a lot of communities that have a dark sky ordinance this strict, so they may not be familiar with it. Obviously, it's easy to find on the City of Malibu website. Make sure they realize you're going to have to meet it because your plans are going to be checked and your installation is going to be inspected. Maximum color temperature is 3000 K. It's better to use 2700, 2400, 2200, or there are now some lighting products that are amber, and many of them are called turtle-friendly amber. The reason for that is that sea turtles are very susceptible to light at night. When the hatchlings are born, their internal programming says go towards the light, which was the moon, which would take them usually out to sea. Instead, they go toward the light, which is land, and they cross roads and they get run over, they get attacked by birds. And sea turtles are actually now nearing extinction because of that primarily. So you can use amber lights that are well shielded along the shore and along the coast. If you're doing a property there, please consider that. Some luminaires are limited to 850 lumens. Most LED luminaires do not have a socket for a screw-in lamp. They're permanently installed. So the luminaire itself will have a lumen rating. Slide, please. Security lighting at the site perimeter is limited to motion sensing lights, 3000 Kelvin or less, 850 lumens or less, and fully shielded. Lights are permitted for driveways and entries. No other perimeter lighting is allowed. This is important. You're not going to be able to put security lighting all the way around the perimeter. You can light the interior of the site, such as a parking lot or something, yes, but you can't light the perimeter of the parking lot. All lights must be turned off at 11 p.m. unless people are present, and then the lighting use must cease 10 minutes after the area is vacated. Motion controlled lights are allowed at building entrances and driveway egress points. Light trespass onto adjacent residential properties, ESHA buffer, Pacific Ocean, beaches, and public viewing areas is limited to 0.1 foot candles. This is a very, very small amount of light. It's meant to say, well, if you have a little incidental trespass, we guess we can live with it, but it's got to be small and it's got to be incidental and less than 0.1. It's a very small amount of light. Slide, please. Oh, by the way, those foot candles I'm talking about, if you're working with professionals are going to be expected to do lighting calculations to demonstrate that that is not going to occur when they submit their plans. So be prepared to prove it, not just say we're going to do it. You can get LED replacement lamps for not only incandescent fixtures, but you can get them for high intensity discharge fixtures or compact fluorescent fixtures. Here's two examples. Now, frankly, from an optical standpoint, an efficiency standpoint, and everything else, you're probably going to want to look at new luminaires. It's a good investment because you'll use the least amount of energy and they'll last the longest. But in some cases, you're going to be motivated to choose lamps. These are screw-in lamps. You generally have to, from a wiring standpoint, you have to eliminate the wiring to the ballast that is typically in luminaires using HID lamps or fluorescent lamps. You have to eliminate the ballast. These will operate directly off the power. So an electrician is going to have to modify them even if you use these lamps. So just be aware, it's not as easy as sending a maintenance man out to screw in a different bulb. You're going to have to do it a little bit more thoroughly, and I would recommend a professional electrician. Slide, please. Area lighting is something that is definitely in the crosshairs of our concerns. Fully shielded downlighting, we used to call them shoe boxes, but LEDs have made them very flat, like the one in the middle. The older HID ones are more like a box, more like a shoe box with a flat lens on the bottom. For those with modest budgets, you may want to convert the old shoe boxes, but I can tell you putting in a new luminaire, like the one in the middle, it's probably almost as economical because of the labor that you have to put into it, and it will last longer and work better. The one on the left is being sold as an LED fixture for area lighting. You can't use it. It doesn't have a flat lens. That drop sag lens is going to throw light sideways and upwards. It is not fully shielded. You can't use it. The one on the right is very similar to the one in the middle, but it's got a knuckle so you can tip it up and shoot out further. You're not allowed to do that. If you put one of those in, you're going to be required to change it and make it flat. So there's a lot, they're very popular in a lot of places. You're not going to be allowed to use them in Malibu. Slide, please. Now, a lot of people are saying post-top lighting is not going to be allowed. That's not true. There are a lot of post-op lighting out there where the light shines down. It's fully shielded. The two on the left are very modern versions, but the one on the right, this is a classic. It's called the Town and Country lantern. But what's happening is all the lights are in the top of it shining downward. So it is fully shielded. So the opportunity here to replace traditional as well as contemporary post-op lighting is relatively easy to do. And there's a lot of choices, both aesthetically and functionally, in terms of light output, etc. Slide, please. The trick to doing outdoor lighting in parking lots, driveways, site roads, all that kind of stuff, including retail lighting, if you have any of that to do, is to pick lights with the right type of distribution. Okay, if you have a light in the middle of a parking lot, it's going to be a type 5. You want the light to go in all directions. If you got a light though you're trying to light forward away from something, that's a type 4. A type 1 you put in the middle of a boulevard or a street where it's divided and you have a place to put them. But a lot of streets are lighted with type 2s and type 3s. A lot of parking lots are lighted with, you use all of these in parking lots except type 1. They're pretty uncommon. But I've used type 2, type 3, type 4, and type 5 to light parking lots. Well, the nice thing about LEDs is the pictures that I just showed you, the luminaires I just showed you, all they do is change the optics in the luminaire. So they may all look the same, but they have different types. Something to be careful of, again, if you're using a good electrical contractor or you're working with a commercial lighting vendor or distributor, if you don't understand this or you're not familiar with it, they may be able to help you. Thing is that you are going to need to submit plans of your property with the new lighting on them, with calculations that show the trespass at the perimeter of the site. That's going to be a requirement that's going to force you to work with either a commercial lighting sales representative, commercial lighting vendor, architects, engineers, but you're going to be taking a real chance by winging it, saying, I'll just put up one of these. If it's a small property, it may be, you may be able to make that case with the city, but I wouldn't plan on it. Plan on doing calculations that show that you're not creating light trespass problems, particularly at your property limits. Slide, please. Here's an example of how these, there's something in the way of shields that are attached to some of these. These are typically used for street lighting. As you can see here, here's a neighborhood where the street lights have been converted to LED, but the different types of shields have been attached to minimize light going one direction or another. For example, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a front side shield. And what it's doing is it's protecting light from going beyond, across the street and beyond the sidewalk. Whereas on the bottom side, the row at the bottom, there's a what's called a house side shield that's preventing light from going backwards and hitting the house behind it. So you can combine them. Some will be front side and house side. There's another one in the upper right-hand corner, a CSS cul-de-sac shield. And what it's doing is it's minimizing the light in the going to the left and to the right forward so that you don't overlight the house that's opposite the light. Likewise, there's right-hand side shields and left-hand side shields if you want to prevent light from, again, trespassing onto an adjacent property, somebody's front door, somebody's yard. These are all possible in both street lighting and in certainly in lighting you might be using. And I'm thinking a lot of you are going to have parking lots where you've got poles that are 15 to 20 feet tall. It's pretty common height for that, maybe as high as 25 feet. You can use these shields so you keep light from leaving your property and going onto adjacent properties or onto adjacent streets. It's a great tool and they're very inexpensive. You got to know what you're doing. This is where having professional help is very, very important. Slide, please. For building mounted lighting, these are all examples of fully shielded lights. One in the middle center is probably the most powerful, and it can be used to light a relatively large area. Keep in mind, the types I was just showing you will be available on fixtures like the one in the middle in particular. But the one on the right will probably also have some optical options. The rest of them, not so much. The rest of them you're going to find useful next to doors on multifamily properties and retail establishments and things like that. And they're going to be good for those sorts of applications. Slide, please. Some sites have bollards, and they're used largely to light walkways, not so much driveways once in a while, but mostly walkways. And these are two examples of bollards. You're probably going to have to replace the bollards that are there. And these are two where the light comes out and goes downwards. And that's why you're going to choose them. They're going to have different distribution patterns. Once again, working with a commercial lighting agent or distributor or a good design build contractor or an architect or engineer, they can help you by doing the calculations to help tell you what wattage, where to put them, etc. I strongly recommend getting professional help, particularly the larger or more complex the facility becomes. Slide, please. If you've got any of these, they will not pass. I'm just telling you, floodlights like that or lanterns where you can see the glow through the glass, no. Even the dual headlight, dual par lamp, type of light that you would order, the one on the furthest right, very common for security lighting and very, very inappropriate in the dark sky environment. So you're going to have to go back to some of the other ideas I showed you and realize there are solutions to just about everything, but going backwards to this technology isn't going to work. Slide, please. Strictly prohibited landscape uplights and floodlights. There are going to be some commercial, multifamily, and other properties, hotels, where you have landscape uplights. Well, landscape uplights create uplight that creates sky glow and, frankly, is an environmental impact to birds and other creatures that use trees at night for nesting and what have you. They're going to have to go. It is going to be possible to put in landscape lights, hang from trees and shoot downward. So if you want to create pools of light on the ground, that's something you might want to look into. But again, some of our history of landscape lighting, particularly uplights, not going to work. Also, floodlights. I mentioned floodlights several times today. No. And if it's got that adjustable knuckle like the one on the bottom, people will say, well, we'll just buy one of these, we'll put it on top, and then we'll turn it and point it down. Anything that can be turned down can be turned up. And that's a big concern when we're trying to, implement an ordinance that's fair to everybody. So don't go there. Slide, please. String lights. String lights are permitted, and I was corrected. They're permitted in residential applications as well as outdoor dining areas, places that are habitated by humans, as long as people are there. but they need to be turned off when people aren't there and they're not serving. And of course, you have to follow all the other rules of outdoor lighting. So this is one time you can put in something that's not fully shielded. They have to be 3000 K or less. You've got to be limited to this kind of technology. Remember, seasonal lighting is allowed from November 15th to January 15th without those same restrictions. Slide, please. Here's just some more ideas on wall-mounted outdoor lighting that can be used. Now, some of these, let's take the one on the upper left, sort of a classic variation on a barn light. And that one may have a screw-in light bulb. In other words, you may have a luminaire that is designed to have a regular incandescent bulb in it. Well, you can buy an LED light bulb that you can screw into it as well. As long as you're observing the lumen limits and the color temperature limits, they're fine. So there's not this horrible limit on the types of lighting. There are still a lot of choices out there in terms of style and performance. The key is it's always got to be downlight, nothing going sideways and nothing going up. Slide, please. Here's some more clues. Look at the lantern in the upper left-hand corner. Where is the light? It's in the top. It's shining down. It's okay. One below it. It's in the top. It's shining down. It's okay. The step light up above, it's got an eyelid. You got to pretty much make sure that eyelid doesn't allow light to go upwards or sideways. But there's a lot of these step lights that have just got a white lens on them. No. You're going to have to do something about it. The good news is even the original manufacturer of that may have made a different faceplate that you could simply put on there. And if you replace the light source with an LED, you may be able to work with existing step lights. As you know, step lights are usually installed in walls or in concrete. They're not easy to change. So look around and see if you can solve your problem that way if you've got an existing light. Finally, on the right, you can get all kinds of decorative lights of contemporary or traditional styles that are fully shielded. But if you have those that aren't, you're probably not going to be able to make them fully shielded with anything you do. You're probably going to have to replace them. Slide, please. The slide we've got a problem with the slide, so I'll just talk about it. Is there, are there two steps in this slide? No, go back. So finding proper lighting, I'll just talk around this. You really have several different ways. If you want to choose it yourself, certainly, you're entitled to that. Putting together plans is something you may not be entitled to. You'll have to talk to the city about that. Plans usually should be submitted by an electrical contractor or by an architect or an engineer. But they may accept one if it's a small project or a hospitality project, if it's done some other way. Lighting sales representatives will help you find non-residential commercial lighting. There's a number of them in the area. Each sales representative company represents, somewhere between 20 and 100 different companies. And they're posted on their websites. So you can go hunting, looking for luminaires that way, or you can contact the lighting sales representatives and they can help you find what you're looking for. For commercial lighting sales representatives, I'm a professional designer. I turn to them all the time. I say, hey, I've got this and here's what I'm looking for. Help me find it. And they'll do it because they really know what they're doing. And they can also help you with calculations when you need to do those. Otherwise, doing commercial lighting working with an architect or an engineer or a design build contractor, they already know how to do the find the products and do the calculations and prepare the plans and everything else. That's why I say, unless you've got a relatively modest project, that's your best bet, is to get it done professionally. In the long run, it'll cause you the least amount of grief. There's also Dark Sky Association has a website link here where you can look up products that are dark sky approved for industry commercial lighting. So that can be as a help for you if you want to. But the lighting sales reps, their websites and commercial lighting process are going to probably be your best bet. Slide, please. Some properties are going to say, we want to do it in-house. We're an apartment complex, we're a motel, hotel, and we don't have an awful lot of outdoor lighting. If you're going to do something in-house, you are still going to need to get a permit to change the lighting. That's required by Title 24, Part 6 and Part 3, so you're going to have to do it. It should be limited to simple electrical work, such as replacing luminaires. So let's say you've got a multifamily project and your number one problem is there's a light by every door. That's something you could probably do in-house. You find the right luminaire, you get an electrician to do the installation, or someone's qualified to do the installation, legally qualified. You'd probably get away with doing it that way without having to go much further. But you're still going to have to get a permit, and you're still going to have to get it inspected. Professional work, which is what I've been suggesting for more significant projects, get design assistance at least from professional lighting designers, or from showrooms, or from lighting websites and vendors and manufacturers' representatives. If you've got a large enough project, you will be able to get help from any of these. You'll probably have to pay for the professional lighting designer. Others may do it as a sales incentive. You will still have to complete plans and calculations showing you're not trespassing. The inspector will expect to see those calculations done correctly. So make sure that whoever's doing this knows they're going to be inspected or going to be checked. The installation must be done by a licensed electrical contractor with a permit. Plan review and approval is required. Energy code compliance and Cal Green compliance are going to be required, which means you're going to be doing a first-class job all the way through. No, I didn't say expensive. I just said you're going to do it right. And there will be inspection. And there will be people with light meters checking those trespass limits. So be prepared. Do your homework, do your calculations. Make sure you're not going to put in a whole bunch of lights, have an inspector come out, measure 2 foot candles on some adjacent property and say, you got a big problem. That's why we're doing this program, is to prepare you for doing it right so that you don't suffer through some of the problems people run into when they say, oh, I can do it myself. Be careful about this one. Slide, please. For professional work, I've made this point several times. Almost all commercial lighting outdoor manufacturers sell complying luminaires. Design and construction professionals should use their normal sources of information, especially lighting sales representatives and commercial distributors. I'm checking the plans for some commercial properties right now, and the plans and the calculations are being done by the distributor of the lighting systems. And they're doing a good job because they know what they're doing. Permits will be required for all work. To obtain a permit, plans and specifications demonstrating compliance, including calculations, will need to be supplied in order to get that permit. Slide, please. The city has prepared specific instructions for submitting plans, specifications, and calculations. And here's where you can see that. These will also generally apply to residential properties having parking garages and parking lots for more than 2 vehicles, those having community centers and outdoor recreation areas and apartment complexes. So in other words, once you get more than just a relatively modest multifamily development, you're going to fall into this category. So be ready for it. Slide, please. I'll be happy to answer any questions. We have a few minutes left. Well, Yolanda, the only person who's not working for the city directly right now is me.
I know. We thank you for everything that you have helped us with. It was a great presentation. We'll go post it and see if we get any feedback.
Yeah, I think I've added stuff to both of these for good reason, because I went back and looked at the last generation, and I had COVID when I put those together. So I'm going to beg, I wasn't at my very sharpest, but most of the information was there. These are better, and I hope we just use these from now on.
Yes.
So if you have any critical comments, you want to change something, Tyler or anybody else, Yolanda, any member of staff, let me know. If there's a slide you say, well, that isn't quite what we want to say, just tell me. We can make these changes pretty quickly now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, everybody. Take care.
Take care.
See you one of these days.
Thanks, Yolanda.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.